The Iroquois Caucus announced a joint declaration with the Anishinabek Nation regarding radioactive liquid shipments passing through the territories of both nations. We spoke to Environment Portfolio Chief Clinton Phillips, Grand Chief Tokwiro Norton, and Dr. Gordon Edwards, who is an expert and president of the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. We asked them about the dangers of the proposed shipment.
Well, we're really entering the age of nuclear waste, and people have to realize that now that the nuclear industry is winding down, the waste is getting onto the highways, it's getting into our waterways, and it's going to be abandoned. In fact, the nuclear industry is looking for a way to cut its liabilities, and the way to cut their liabilities is to abandon it, and they want to abandon it right beside major river bodies. They're also trying to transport it over our roads and bridges. Some of this material is so dangerous, such as the liquid material from Chalk River, that it has never been transported before anywhere in North America, because a single liter of this material would be enough to ruin an entire city's water supply. And of course, accidents do happen, and they're just counting on technology as being so perfect that it's never going to fail. We know that that's silly. We've seen examples of this in our daily lives. So we shouldn't really be transporting this stuff. We can handle it on site. And in fact, the reason for transporting it can be accomplished by down blending it on site. What that means is destroying the weapons property of this material. Some of this material can be used for nuclear weapons. That's why they're justifying transporting it. But we know how to get rid of that weapons grade material on site simply by mixing in some other stuff that denatures it and makes it unusable for weapons.
The sheer concern from our people and citizens alike in regards to the possible if there was to be an accident to occur en route, it could be an extremely scary and dangerous outcome. It's something that, once we heard about it, we absolutely want to be on board. We wanted to be part of it.
We hope through our numbers, our communities, the Anishinabek communities, as well as the Iroquois communities, that we begin a process here of putting pressure on the government of Canada. The letter is one thing to send to the Prime Minister. The other thing is now, what kind of pressures do we bring to bear? What kind of forums do we go into? How do we begin to organize amongst our non-Native brothers and sisters also to participate in this, because it's going to affect them just as much as it affects us should there be a disaster. We're not predicting one, but on the other hand, why should we take chances, for something to happen to us? So it's now, this is just part of the task, a very good opportune time for us to get together and do something. As we had talked about, the purpose of the Iroquois Caucus, is to do things of this nature. So now it's time to move on and do what we have to do.
Well, our committee directed a letter to go to the Prime Minister, which Grand Chief Joe Norton just signed today, to ask for the Prime Minister's intervention into this very dangerous proposal to ship this radioactive waste in liquid form to the Savannah site in the U.S. And it's a very dangerous proposition that and if there's a spillage, there's no way to clean it up. And I guess the other issue is that the first responders are not trained to deal with that kind of accident. We had a situation in our area a few weeks ago with a truck that upset near Mallorytown area. And there was some kind of acid that was leaked out, and sort of the truck driver died, and of course a lot of the people who attended that scene had to be taken to hospital as well. In the Picton area, there was a diesel spillage into the Picton Harbor that affected the municipal water supply. So the municipal water supply and the First Nations water supply are very important to our communities, and we don't want to endanger them by this proposal.
I think it's not in the news because the Canadian government is simply afraid to make it daily headlines because people will panic. Society is terrified of this.
It is disturbing. In the United States, there's been more done about this. There's been a lawsuit launched in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to win that lawsuit, but all we were trying to do was to try and insist that there be an environmental impact statement so that other agencies of government and the public could actually comment. What the industry is trying to do is to keep all of this stuff as quiet as possible, and that's the way they've always functioned. For 30 years, they had nuclear power in this country, and they never told anybody that nuclear waste was a giant headache that was going to last for millions of years longer than the nuclear reactors. And yet now the chickens are coming home to roost and they're radioactive. And what the chiefs of the Iroquois and also of the Anishinabek have done is they have declared that we will not allow nuclear waste to be abandoned beside major waterways, because water is the lifeblood of the earth. And to put this material right beside these major water bodies like Lake Huron, the Ottawa River, Lake Ontario, and the Winnipeg River in Manitoba, to abandon waste there is just really looking forward to the poisoning of the earth in days to come.
It is really troublesome. It's really scary. And I think if it becomes headline news every single day or every single evening, the Canadian public will be outraged and certainly, be making phone calls to their elected officials and saying, if you support this, I won't support you. And I think that's what society needs to do. Society has to step up to the plate. We're hearing right now from the people in Savannah, Georgia, who are now being made aware of the possibility of this import from Canada coming, and they're outraged. So it's not just on the Canadian side of the imaginary line that there's outrage, it's also in the U.S. as well. So I think an effort from citizens and people, and certainly First Nations people and the U.S. tribes that live on the American side of the border, is surely a great thing. And again, there's power and strength in numbers, and I plan on being there all the way through.